Yo, Kagurabachi is so good, and a lot of people have picked up on that, but a lot of people haven't still. And so I'm always going to sing its praises, and I'm always going to try to bring more and more people into the fold on this thing. But, I'm going to reach a point, and we're approaching it, where I'm just going to get tired of y'all that are continuously sleeping on this. And nobody wants to reach that point, you know? Nobody wants to see me crash out over that, right? So do me a favor, but more importantly, do yourself a favor and read Kagurabachi, okay? Get out the sheets of sleeping on this thing and get into the pages. But for now, let's talk about chapter 78. All right, so chapter 78 is titled Switch, and we pick up on Double H, who is looking rough. He is still just lumped up against the far wall, having just been eviscerated by Sombra, and he is just panting, trying to catch his breath. And he's thinking to himself, I can't move. I can't move my body. Meanwhile, Chihiro thinks to himself that it's no surprise that Double H can no longer move, because using a super powerful move like he did will completely exhaust your physical and spiritual energy. That's normal. What's abnormal, though, is Mr. Sombra. Because not only did he completely nullify Double H's all-out move, but he's also been sustaining the owl throughout Japan for days. And despite all of that, he's still not even winded. We then get a flashback to when Double H looked at Sombra after he used his Phoenix Fire, and he goes, "You're immortal?" And Chihiro continues his internal monologue and says, "No, that's not it. Suzaku can regenerate, but it can't resurrect the dead. And it consumes tremendous energy. So if you keep getting wounded over and over and relying on the constant regeneration, you'll deplete your spirit energy and ultimately collapse. The regeneration is limited, in theory anyway, because regeneration is incredible. And beyond that, there's been a number of things that have never been recorded during the war that Sombra is capable of now. So I don't know what sparked it, but clearly he's evolved since 18 years ago." Then we get this cold panel of Sombra juxtaposed next to one of Double H, who is just breaking down and crying. And Sombra says, "Now then, first thing is to finish this guy." But then we get this close-up of a door that's right here next to Sombra, and we can see a peephole looking through it. And then suddenly we see on the other side, it's Kuguri. Then in an instant, Kuguri has slashed through this door in an attempt to surprise Sombra, but Sombra is ready. He not only blocks it, but he actually cleaves Kuguri's sword completely in two. We then see Kuguri say Twilight Wave, and then we get an explanation from the narrator on what exactly that means and what his sorcery is. It says, Kuguri's sorcery enables him to store heat generated by his body during battle and unleash it at will. Its capacity is unlimited. The more he accumulates, the more powerful he gets. For the past 7 months, Kuguri has been fighting with only his sword. We then see this massive explosion of energy just rocket out the side of the hotel, and we see Sombra protect himself and then think to himself, they just withdrew. We then cut to a nearby alleyway where we see Toto teleport in carrying Double H's body. Kuguri then drops down quickly after them, and he says, "Double H, are you okay?" And Toto looks at him and says, "What do you think?" And Double H is just still gurgling in pain. And Kuguri says, "He doesn't look good. I couldn't retrieve his arm." And Toto says he's going to be out of commission for a while. And then Kuguri gets shocked and goes, "Oh, the Kumiyori as well." And we see a panel of Samura's foot stepping on it to make sure that they couldn't take it. And Kuguri says, "And we didn't get Iori, the daughter, either." Toto says, "This was a major defeat. He's lucky he survived. I'm amazed you managed to distract that beast for a split second." And Kuguri says, "But now that our pact with Sombra is finished, we have 0 cards to play," and he's starting to look really nervous. We then see that it's actually starting to snow where they are, and Toto says, "Snow?" And Kuguri goes, "It could be because the owl was covering the sky for so long. I can't believe it affected the weather." And Toto looks at him and says, "Not thirsting for a sword fight anymore, huh?" And Kuguri says, "No, that kind of insane power is just a vibe killer." And Toto says, "Well, Yura's on the move now in Tokyo." And Kuguri says, "I guess we'll have to place our bets on that. We can't fight a beast like that head on. It's impossible." We then get a close-up on my boy Double H, who is not looking good, and he just weakly mutters, "Kill me. Kill me." And Toto and Kuguri look towards him, and he just says, "Those eyes. Those eyes. He feels nothing for me, not even hatred." And he's referring to Chihiro. And he is just like gurgling and moaning and not in a good spot. My goat is not in a good spot. We then cut back to Sombra and Chihiro. And Sombra says, Chihiro, why? Why did you pick up and wield the enchanted blade again? And Chihiro says, I've learned everything, Sombra, about the malediction, about the swordmaster's crimes. And at that, Sombra tenses up and he says, that bastard Shiba. Listen, Chihiro, that was the swordmaster's doing, okay? Your dad was only responsible for creating the weapons. He was just a hero who did everything he could for his country. And Chihiro says, so I'm told. Mr. Shiba said the same thing. Sombra internally thinks to himself, he's still not swallowing it. He's still not getting it. Then out loud, he says, well, if you know about the malediction, then we can just cut to the chase. The swordmaster can't be allowed to live. Chihiro says, so to that end, you're willing to let all the sword bearers die, yourself included? And Sombra says, it's necessary. To stop the malediction, it's necessary. And for Iori's future too. So if you stand in my way, I will cut you down again. Chihiro says, what Iori needs for her future is you. If you're wondering why I picked up the enchanted blade again, I did it to stop you. We then cut to Europe, back in the same moment where we saw him last time, just outside of Tokyo, above the Kamunabi headquarters, where he's putting his hand down and starting to use sorcery on the earth below. We then cut to this guy, whoever this is. Presumably this is somewhere beneath the earth in the Kamunabi headquarters, because we see like a rock fall down into this water and start to disturb it. We then cut to the Kamunabi office where they are currently having some sort of meeting. And this isn't the actual panel. This is from way earlier in the manga, but it will just help me illustrate this. So we see, I believe, this guy say, the owl has cleared up in the sky. And the Masumi have reported that they've encountered Sombra in Kyoto. Then Azumi chimes in and says they also encountered 3 Hishaku and confirmed their possession of the Kumiyori. We then see that up above their table there's like some sort of intercom system thing, and it says enemy attack. Enemy attack. We then see that the voice is coming from this guy, and he says that there's been a hit to the force field directly over the Senuchi, a pine tree spell. The giraffe Kamunabi guy says, it's the Hishaku. And Wolverine says, they sure are busy. And then this guy says, it's hard to believe they'd attack headquarters. The narrator then says, the Senuchi is currently being held underground at Kamunabi headquarters. And deeper down, the Swordmaster is also imprisoned there. In the Tokyo Underground facility, there are over 500 employees, including non-combatants. It's protected by a solid rectangular force field. We then cut to Hat Shaku, who is just using his pine tree sorcery, creating all of these roots and destruction in Tokyo, and he's laughing to himself, saying, man, this thing is strong. We then cut back to the Kamunabi, where Boss Man says, let's welcome them in. Allow them to penetrate the first level. And they say, wait, what? And he says, our primary mission here is to protect the citizens from sorcery attacks. We can't allow a surface battle. We then cut back to this guy who says, retract the protective force field. He then says, invaders detected on level 1. We have 7 visitors. We see Gramps of the Kamunabi get shocked by this, and he thinks to himself, according to the intel from Rokuhira's son, there are 10 total Hishaku. So if 3 were confirmed to be in Kyoto, that means these 7 are, and out loud he says, that's the entire remaining forces of the Hishaku. Boss Man then says, send a force to intercept them, a top level one as well. We then see Azumi get ready and he goes, I'll get him. Gramps then thinks to himself, the Hishaku, I really thought they were going to use Sombra to take out the other sword bearers first. That's why I assigned Shiba and Hiyuki to their security. They can't expect to take this place down without an enchanted blade. Was their plan foiled by Sombra being held back? No, it almost seems like they were planning on him disengaging Owl. What are they plotting? Well, in any case, if this place is the battlefield. We then cut to my boy Hakari, who is getting up out of this like medical bay as another character in the room says, sorry, I know you're just waking up, but as you can see, it's an emergency. Can you move? And Hakari says, at your service, sir. And that's where the chapter ends. Another incredible chapter of Kagurabachi. Hokazono is just spoiling us, man. I love this panel so much. I can't wait to see some of the fan artists cook up with this thing. But first and foremost, it's Mother's Day, at least here in the United States. So for those of you that have not called your mother, make sure to do that. But this chapter, let me just go ahead and rip off the band-aid here. Double H doubters, just get your licks in, get your laughs in while you can, okay? Because I know I'm coming out on top here, and this chapter confirmed it. A lot of people been clowning. I hadn't read the chapter till right now, but I'd already seen people clowning on me for the Double H slander, and y'all are crazy, okay? Because all this chapter did was cement Double H's greatness because he survived, okay? They got him out of there. So the comeback is going to be all the sweeter because of the downfall, okay? So y'all stay on that side. That's all I want to say. Stay over there. We don't want you in Double H camp when he has his glorious return, which is all but confirmed at this point. So anyway, it's darkest just before dawn, okay? Just imagine how much he's going to grow from this, okay? His beloved Chihiro abandoned him, so now he's just going to go like Super Saiyan. You know what I mean? Anyway, a couple of interesting things from this chapter. First and foremost, Sombra just evolving continuously over the past 18 years makes me wonder what he's been up to, like the fact that he has continuously pushed himself and trained. Does that mean, even since before he struck this deal, and clearly I would say before he struck this deal with the Hishaku, he was maybe planning on doing something about all of this himself, and so keeping the skills sharp for that? Or maybe just, seeing how he and his daughter were treated, always wanted to keep the blade keen, as it were. But primarily an interesting thing here was the fact that Chihiro said that resurrection with the Suzaku was impossible, and yet it seemingly was used to resurrect him. Now, we might be getting into weird semantic territory here on what actual resurrection means, but Chihiro was proclaimed dead, by the doctors, by Shiba or whatever, and yet he came back, right? So to me, that spells resurrection. So I feel like that was mainly meant to cast doubt on the Aruha situation, but I still think Aruha is alive. And I think that also just makes sense for what Samura's plan is, even though he and Chihiro haven't broached that conversation exactly, he was like, yeah, I gotta kill all the sword bearers, but I still think he's not really planning on killing all of them, at least. I don't know if, Swordmaster, obviously, we don't know about some of the other ones still, but I feel like he would have resurrected Aruha just like he did Chihiro. But anyway, aside from that, what the hell's going on with this guy, right? Like, I don't want this dude's job, but he seems to be chill with it. He's just straight levitating on his pillow and being the entire security system. I guess his sorcery is the force field sorcery and perhaps beyond that as well. Like, is this something he made, or is this something the Kamunabi made that enhances his sorcery? Like, did he willingly step into this role? A lot of questions here. Also, just interesting that the technology we're going to like see that kind of integrated into the world building and the sorcery here, which I'm excited for. The thing I might be most excited for, though, is the return of my glorious Drip King Azumi, who says, I'm going to go handle these Hishaku, which has me worried for him, unless he's the mole, which, he's like, hey, I'll go handle it, which that's interesting. But if he's not the mole, I don't know if our boy, even though he is the Drip King, can 1v7, right? And he probably won't be alone, but still, he seemed a little too overzealous. Even though I've got faith in him, I'm worried for him. And then finally, of course, everyone's favorite brain damage bestie, Hakuri, is back. I can't wait to see how he comes into the story now, and if his powers are going to be affected by his injuries, because they're insanely strong, right? And one thing I'm in particularly curious about is if the storehouse connection between enchanted blades and sword wielders works the opposite way, right? Like, if he registers the Kumiyori in the storehouse now, can he also command Double H since they're connected? Or does it have to be the other way, where like you would have to register the human and then you'd also get access to the blade? Because that could open up some interesting possibilities. Oh yeah, one last thought. I wonder what the range on Shiba's teleport actually is, because we know he's out there guarding the Swordmasters, right? Could he just teleport back to Tokyo and help real quick, or is that kind of out of the question? I guess we'll find out. But as always, y'all let me know your thoughts, and thanks for watching.